Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepless Scientist, a quiet place in the cosmos where your thoughts can unwind and knowledge becomes a soft lullaby for the night. Tonight's journey drifts through a realm that feels both intimate and infinite, where science brushes gently against the edges of imagination. We're about to wander into the strange, beautiful possibility that your dreams, those private theatres of light and memory, might not belong only to you. The topic tonight is called quantum dreams. Do parallel selves share them? Before you settle in, maybe take a deep breath. Let the room dim around you. Let your shoulders loosen, your breath slow. If you enjoy these quiet wanderings, feel free to subscribe or leave a comment later, telling me where you're listening from and what time it is in your world right now. I love seeing our small constellation of dreamers gathered from every corner of the earth. Now, let's close the doors of the day and step softly into the world of night. Dreams begin where the noise ends, in that hush when thought unbuttons itself from reason. A hidden landscape comes alive, a theatre lit not by lamps but by the faint glow of your own mind. Maybe you've had a dream so vivid, so inexplicably real that when you woke up it clung to you like the scent of rain. The colours lingered, the emotions didn't fade, and for a heartbeat you felt the strangest pull, as if someone somewhere was still living that dream. It's an unsettling thought, comforting too in its mystery. Could dreams be more than the sum of our memories? Could they be faint signals passing through something larger, like messages across a hidden network of selves? For centuries we've treated dreams as private letters written by the subconscious, fragments of unspoken fears, repressed desires, or the quiet stitching of memory. Freud saw them as riddles coded in symbols. Jung imagined them as doorways into a shared human myth. Modern science has mapped their rhythms, the rapid flicker of REM sleep, the deep oceanic quiet of slow waves. Electrodes trace their patterns, scanners reveal their colours. Yet even under the microscope of neuroscience, one question refuses to sleep. Why do some dreams feel borrowed? Every culture has a story about dreams that spill beyond the self. In ancient Greece, priests slept inside temples to meet gods and shared visions. In Aboriginal Australia, the dream time wasn't a private state. It was a timeless world where every being once met. Across centuries and continents, people whispered of lovers who dreamt the same scene on the same night, of twins who awoke with matching memories. Science remains silent on these stories, but silence doesn't erase them. It only invites us to listen closer. Imagine this. You drift off to sleep. Your breathing steadies. Your brain begins its nightly symphony. Electrical waves ripple from one region to another, folding sensations into storylines. Somewhere deep inside, neurons fire in patterns, each one a tiny spark of possibility. Science calls them states. Quantum mechanics might call them superpositions, but for the sake of peace, let's call them dream seeds. Tiny probabilities waiting to bloom. Now imagine that somewhere else, perhaps in another corner of possibility, another version of you falls asleep too. Maybe this other you made a different choice once, turned left where you turned right, whispered yes instead of no. Physicists call this the many worlds idea, that every quantum decision may spin the universe into countless branches, each carrying its own version of events, of selves, of stories. It's a daring thought, that reality itself is an ever-blooming garden of forking paths, and that your dream tonight might echo along many of them at once. But here's the paradox. These worlds, if they exist, are separate. They do not talk. They do not meet. Like ships passing silently through the fog, they sail forever apart, each unaware of the other's wake. And yet, when you wake from a dream that feels impossibly shared, when the memory of it stirs a pulse of recognition so deep it almost aches, you can't help but wonder, what if, for the briefest moment, those distant ships saw the same glimmer on the horizon? What if dreaming is not just the mind remembering, but reality remembering itself through you? Science may one day find new languages for such mysteries. Perhaps quantum theory will soften into metaphors, and metaphors will grow sharp enough to become theories again. For now, we stand between them, in that twilight of mind and cosmos, listening to the gentle hum of possibility. Dreams, after all, are where the universe seems to practice imagination. They are where physics becomes poetry, and where the self stretches just far enough to glimpse its other reflections. Whether these reflections live in neurons or in neighbouring worlds, the wonder remains the same, that each night the infinite becomes intimate, and the vast machinery of existence leans close enough for you to hear it whisper. So tonight, we begin not with proof, but with curiosity. We'll wander through the theories of many worlds and the silent rules of quantum chance. We'll listen to what neuroscience says about why we dream, and what philosophy suspects about who dreams. But before all of that, let's rest inside the simplest truth, that somewhere in the dark, as your breath slows and your mind drifts, you might already be meeting yourself in another story told beneath another sky. Dreams have always been treated like messages sealed in the envelope of sleep. They arrive without warning, scatter across your mind like leaves on water, and disappear the moment you reach for them. For most of modern history, people believe these visions came from deep within, an internal theatre where your hidden thoughts performed in secret. Yet, as the science of the mind began to unfold, a quiet revolution started to reshape that idea. What if dreams are not just inner conversations between your fears and memories, but delicate crossings between awareness and something far wider? When you sleep, your body falls into stillness, but your brain does not. Inside, it glows like a city at night. Regions that guide reason and restraint begin to dim, while those that process feeling and imagination flare brightly. The result is a world without boundaries, a playground of associations where logic loosens its grip. Neuroscientists call this the REM phase, named after the quick darting of the eyes beneath your eyelids. But let's imagine it instead as the oceanic part of sleep. The tide that rises every night to wash your waking thoughts clean. In that tide, images form that have never existed before. Faces stitched together from strangers you've passed. Rooms built from memories of places you've never been. It's as if the mind takes its own fragments and builds a world out of them. And maybe that's what dreaming really is. The brain experimenting with meaning, weaving yesterday's data into tomorrow's understanding. There's a kind of gentle rehearsal for life, a simulation run not by computers, but by consciousness itself. Some researchers believe that during dreaming, the brain is reorganizing information, strengthening certain connections and pruning others. Like a gardener tending to a vast neural forest, it keeps what's alive and useful and lets the rest fall away. The patterns of thought and emotion that survive the night help shape who you become by morning. In this sense, dreams are not random. They are sculptors, working quietly in the dark. But even the most precise neuroscience leaves something unanswered. For all our measurements, there is a feeling that cannot be graphed, a sense that some dreams contain an intelligence not entirely our own. Maybe it's the dream that arrives before a decision, showing you the consequences of paths not yet taken, or the one that returns each year like a familiar visitor, whispering a message you can almost understand. These moments make you wonder, is dreaming purely an internal process, or is it the mind's way of touching the larger network of reality? Let's look at it softly, not as a claim, but as a metaphor. Picture your mind as a single wave rising and falling upon a vast ocean. When you wake, you feel separate, a crest distinct from all others. But when you sleep, the boundaries dissolve. The wave settles back into the sea, and for a few hours it forgets where you end and everything else begins. Perhaps that is what a dream really is, the ocean remembering itself through each of its waves. There's beauty in this idea. It suggests that dreaming may be both personal and universal at once, an intimate dialogue with the cosmos conducted in the language of images. The atoms in your body were once part of stars. The energy that flickers in your neurons is the same energy that hums through galaxies. It would not be so strange then if your mind sometimes echoed patterns older and wider than your own story. Science has begun to explore this subtle territory. Some studies suggest that dreams are essential for emotional healing. During REM sleep, the brain replays distressing memories but removes the sharpness of fear, like sanding down the edges of glass. You wake lighter, more able to carry what once felt unbearable. Others propose that dreaming acts as a kind of creative laboratory, where the mind combines ideas in ways waking logic would never allow. Artists, mathematicians, even scientists have described solutions or inspirations emerging from their dreams, as if imagination, unchained from daylight, could glimpse truths hidden by reason. But there's something even more intriguing here. When two people share a deep emotional bond, their sleep cycles sometimes synchronize. Couples who live together, twins separated by distance, studies show their bodies unconsciously mirror each other's rhythms. The heartbeats slow in similar patterns, the breathing matches pace. It's as if connection doesn't always sleep when the body does. While this doesn't prove any quantum exchange or psychic bridge, it does remind us of something profound, that we are at every level systems that resonate. Maybe that's why certain dreams feel collective. They carry themes that repeat across humanity: falling, flying, losing, searching, finding. These are not just private symbols, but universal signatures of being alive. The physicists might say that the laws of nature write themselves into every mind, the way gravity writes itself into every planet's orbit. The psychologists might call it shared archetypes. Either way, it shows that even in the solitude of sleep, you are not alone. So perhaps the old view that dreams are merely whispers from the subconscious tells only half the story. The other half is this: dreams may be the mind's most natural bridge between the inner and the infinite. They are where neurons and stars speak the same quiet dialect of pattern and possibility. When you close your eyes, you aren't shutting the world out. You're letting the universe in. And if there truly are other versions of you scattered across countless realities, maybe they too drift into this same sea each night, each wave remembering its shared origin. We may never know for sure. But the next time you wake from a dream that feels too large, too luminous, too alive to belong only to one life, you might pause before dismissing it. Perhaps it was a postcard from the wider self, the part of you that stretches beyond the skin of this world, whispering across the quiet waters of the mind. When you think of a mirror, you probably imagine a single reflection, an image of yourself, reversed but familiar. But imagine standing between two mirrors facing each other, their silver surfaces bouncing your image back and forth into a corridor of endless versions. Each reflection is slightly different: a shift in the tilt of your head, a change in the light, the soft distortion of distance. If you walk away, the reflections continue, infinite, silent, all carrying the trace of your motion. This is the simplest image of what physicists call the multiverse. It's not about mirrors made of glass, but about possibility itself repeating and unfolding, perhaps endlessly. The multiverse began not as fantasy, but as an attempt to solve a puzzle buried in the mathematics of the quantum world. When scientists observed particles, tiny things like electrons or photons, they realized these particles behaved like waves of probability, existing in many potential states at once. A particle could spin this way or that, be here or there, both and neither until observed. The act of measurement seemed to force a choice, collapsing those possibilities into one. But what if, some asked, the universe never chose at all? What if every possible outcome still happened, each in its own branch of reality? That idea is called the many worlds view. But instead of using formulas or equations, imagine it this way. At every decision, the universe splits quietly like a branching path in a forest. Each path continues, alive and real, even if you can only walk one of them. Somewhere another version of you took the other turn, said a different word, lived a slightly altered story. These are not parallel lines drawn on a page. They are layers of existence stacked so closely that they never touch, like notes in a chord you cannot hear separately but feel all at once. It's a breathtaking thought, one that stretches imagination to its edge. But with it comes a quiet confusion. If every possibility unfolds, why do we experience only one? Why can we not sense the others? The answer, in the language of physics, involves something called decoherence, a soft but final separation between possibilities once they interact with their surroundings. For the sake of the voice, let's call it the fading of connection, like mist breaking apart under the morning sun. In this picture, when an event could go two ways, reality doesn't pick one. It simply allows both to bloom, each sealed off from the other by this natural fading. Once that happens, the paths can no longer influence one another. They drift forever apart, isolated but equally real. Like pages torn from a book and carried by separate winds, they travel into their own destinies, never again to meet. And yet, deep down, you might feel something strange, a soft intuition that you are more than the single story you inhabit. Perhaps that's why déjà vu feels so haunting, or why certain choices weigh heavier than a reason explains. Somewhere inside, the idea of multiple lives, multiple selves, has always resonated, not because it promises grandeur, but because it offers symmetry, a cosmic balance where every possibility finds a home. Science itself remains cautious. Most of the multiverse is, for now, beyond measurement. We cannot step between the branches, cannot signal across them. The equations that predict their existence don't yet offer a door. But still, the idea hums quietly in the background of modern physics, like a half-remembered melody. It's as though the universe is reminding us that what we call reality might be just one verse in a song too vast for human hearing. If we pause here, between wonder and skepticism, we find an unexpected beauty. The multiverse is not only a scientific speculation, it is also a mirror for the mind. Each of us, through memory, regret and imagination, already carries many worlds within. The version of you who stayed, the version who left, the self that spoke truth, the one that stayed silent, they all exist in the quiet theatre of thought. You feel them when you dream, when you wonder what if, when you sense the echo of lives unlived. Philosophers have long whispered about this multiplicity of being. They speak of the possible self, a psychological companion to the physical multiverse. These are the versions of you that memory invents and emotion sustains, shaping your choices and your empathy. When you dream, perhaps these selves rise from the background, trying on the lives you didn't choose, testing the edges of your reality. In this way, the many worlds interpretation becomes more than physics. It becomes an allegory for human consciousness. Just as the universe might branch into infinite stories, so might the mind branch into infinite reflections of self. Your dreams could then be seen as the meeting ground, a quiet place where some of these reflections blur together for a moment, before drifting back apart. The brain, after all, is itself a quantum storyteller. Billions of neurons flicker, each carrying tiny electrical waves that interfere, combine and cancel out, like ripples in a pond. They create patterns that are never perfectly repeated. In a sense, every thought is a branching universe, every memory a choice solidified from infinite mental possibilities. When you remember something differently from a friend, when two people recall the same event but not quite the same way, you're witnessing a small human form of decoherence, the mind's own version of worlds parting ways. This perhaps is the bridge between the scientific and the poetic. We may never prove that alternate universes exist beyond our reach, but we experience their metaphor every day in our shifting thoughts, our regrets, our dreams. The multiverse, then, might not be out there in space. It might be inside us, written in the fluid language of perception and change. So the next time you catch yourself staring into a mirror and wondering who else you might have been, remember this: the reflection you see is only one of many. Behind it shimmer countless others, each living a version of your story, each dreaming its own dream. And though you can't step through the glass, perhaps, just perhaps, the light that binds all reflections together is the same quiet awareness that flickers behind your eyes right now. Maybe that is what the multiverse has been trying to tell us all along, that the infinite does not live beyond us, but within us, repeating, branching, and remembering one luminous thought at a time. Every morning, when you open your eyes, you rebuild yourself from memory. You remember your name, your story, the people you love, and the world you left waiting in the dark. Consciousness returns like sunlight through a window, and the illusion of continuity settles in again. The comforting sense that you are the same person who fell asleep the night before. Yet, in the quiet borderland between waking and dreaming, something more fluid seems to breathe beneath that certainty, as if identity were not a single flame, but a constellation of sparks flickering across unseen skies. Who are you, exactly? Is your self a steady thread, unbroken across time, or a pattern constantly redrawn by experience? Neuroscience offers a humble answer. What we call the self is less a solid thing and more a story the brain tells to keep its many parts in harmony. Memory, emotion, perception, and language are like instruments in an orchestra, each playing a different melody, yet together producing the symphony we recognize as I. When sleep comes, that orchestra quiets. The conductor steps away, and the instruments begin to improvise. In dreams, the sense of self dissolves. You may become someone else entirely, a stranger, a child, an observer watching from the edge of another life. You accept impossible transformations without question. You walk through walls, breathe underwater, fly without wings. The dream self bends and reshapes as effortlessly as thought itself. And yet, somewhere within those shifting shapes, a thread remains. Even when you dream as another, there's a whisper that says, "This is still me." It's a fragile continuity, one that doesn't depend on form or setting. Maybe that's because identity is not confined to the body that holds it. It's a process, not a place, a moving pattern of awareness capable of wearing many masks. In that sense, the idea of parallel selves doesn't sound so foreign. It may simply be a magnified reflection of something the mind already does every night. Create versions of you that live, act, and feel real, even if they last only until dawn. Philosophers have long wrestled with this. The British thinker Derek Parfit once suggested that personal identity is not about strict continuity, but about connectedness. You are the network of your thoughts, memories, and intentions, each moment giving rise to the next, like links in a chain of light. Break too many links, and the chain becomes someone else. But if the pattern endures, even through change, then you survive. Perhaps across the multiverse this pattern continues, each version of you carrying a slightly altered script, yet recognizable in its tone. If we take this idea softly, it's not frightening. It's freeing. It means that identity is spacious, flexible, able to stretch across possibilities like silk in the wind. The self could be seen not as a fixed point, but as a melody echoing through multiple worlds. The body changes, memories fade, decisions diverge, but the music continues, shaped by different instruments, always humming a tune that feels familiar. There's an old image used by Buddhist philosophers, the candle flame that lights another. The new flame is not the old one, yet the fire is continuous. In this way, consciousness passes forward, not as substance but as transmission. Each version of you may be a new candle lit by the spark of the last, stretching through moments and perhaps, if reality allows, through universes. The many worlds theory simply extends that line of thought outward, suggesting that every flicker continues somewhere, each burning in its own quiet room of existence. And yet, the boundaries remain real. Physics reminds us that decoherence, the fading of quantum overlap, prevents these worlds from touching once they've branched apart. The other yous are out of reach, not because they are less real, but because the fabric of reality itself has folded them away. Still, awareness has a curious way of defying barriers. Dreams don't obey the rules of distance or probability. A single feeling, a flash of recognition, can pull together fragments that logic would keep apart. Perhaps that's why certain dreams feel like messages, why we sometimes wake with the sense that someone, somewhere, just sent us a memory we didn't earn. From the perspective of the mind, the boundaries between realities may be more permeable than physics allows. In your dreams, you already travel without motion, see without eyes, remember what never happened. The universe within your head follows its own laws, and in that sense it might be said that every dream is a private multiverse, a landscape where countless selves coexist for a night, blending and separating in patterns too delicate for waking reason to trace. Memory itself behaves strangely too. Each time you recall something, your brain doesn't replay a recording. It reconstructs the experience anew. The memory you retrieve becomes slightly altered, softened by new emotions, reshaped by context. Over time, the act of remembering creates many versions of the same past, branching quietly in the mind. The neuroscientist might call this reconsolidation. The poet might call it time's echo. Either way, it means that even within one life, your identity multiplies gently, every recollection a fork in your personal universe. So when we speak of parallel selves, perhaps we don't need to imagine distant galaxies or invisible dimensions. They may already exist inside us, as potential selves waiting in the wings of consciousness, rehearsing the lines we didn't say, the lives we didn't live. Dreams could be the stage where these silent actors briefly appear, each playing a version of you before vanishing back into the dark. And if we extend the metaphor still further, perhaps the purpose of dreaming isn't just to explore possibilities, but to remind us that we are made of them. The mind is a laboratory of infinity, a space where the self learns that its limits are illusions. Each night when you surrender to sleep, you dissolve into that infinity. You become less of a person and more of a pattern, woven into the vastness of possibility itself. When morning comes, you gather those threads again, shaping them into the version of you that fits the day. But somewhere, just beyond the reach of waking, the others remained. The dreamer who kept flying when you woke, the one who took the road you didn't, the self who remembers what you forget. They are not ghosts or fantasies. They are reminders that identity, like the universe, is always larger than what fits inside a single story. And perhaps that's what gives each of us a strange kind of comfort. The idea that no experience, no dream, no version of us is ever truly lost. It simply continues elsewhere, carried forward by the vast and patient rhythm of existence. You don't need to believe it literally to feel its truth. It's enough to know that every choice, every dream, every breath is part of something that never quite ends. A melody still echoing somewhere beyond the edge of your waking world. If you could listen closely enough, perhaps you'd hear the faint hum that underlies everything, the quiet rhythm of chance itself. Every particle, every atom, every breath you take dances to this unseen music. It's the choreography of possibility, unfolding in patterns too small for the senses, yet vast enough to build the universe. The physicists have their language for it: probabilities, waves, superpositions. But let's imagine it in gentler terms: a cosmic ballet of maybes, where every dancer moves in time with 1,000 potential steps, each one both real and waiting. In the ordinary world, we're used to certainty. A coin falls, it lands heads or tails. A door opens or it doesn't. Yet in the quantum world, the world beneath the surface of things, the rules bend. A coin there doesn't choose. It spins in both directions at once, existing in every possibility until someone, or something, looks. Observation seems to solidify it, like frost forming where the air cools. But even that phrase, when someone looks, hides a mystery. What does it mean for the universe to notice itself? To understand this softly, imagine standing in a room lit by 1,000 candles. The flames flicker in countless directions, their light overlapping, weaving a shimmer that fills the space. That shimmer is the wave of possibilities, the superposition of all outcomes. When you focus on one candle, its flame seems steady, singular. But in truth, it's part of a larger dance. The universe behaves in much the same way, a sea of overlapping potentials gently waiting to be noticed. The physicist Erwin Schrödinger once told a story to explain this strangeness, a story about a cat in a box that is both alive and not until the box is opened. Of course, no one means you should trap a real cat. The thought experiment simply reveals how odd the quantum world can be. But to make it more humane, imagine instead a dream. In your dream, two endings exist at once. You're both saved and lost, both falling and flying. Only when you wake does one version fade, leaving behind the one you remember. The other still exists, perhaps, in a place beyond waking's reach. This is what scientists mean when they say the universe is probabilistic. Every event, every particle flicker, every neuron firing in your brain is like that dream, suspended between many outcomes. Yet we only ever see one. Somewhere in that transition, possibility becomes history. How it happens is the deepest riddle physics knows. Some call it measurement, some call it collapse. Others, like the many worlds thinkers, say there is no collapse at all, only branching, an endless unfolding of paths. If we think of reality as a great story, then quantum mechanics is the grammar that allows multiple sentences to be true at once. It's the reason the smallest pieces of nature can behave like waves, ripples that pass through two doors at once, and then, with the lightest touch of attention, become particles again. The equations behind this are beautiful but silent. They hum with symbols that few can read, yet their message is simple. The universe is written in probabilities, not absolutes. But there's another layer to this. In your daily life, you live inside a kind of averaging out of all that uncertainty. Every molecule of air, every ray of light, every cell in your body plays by quantum rules, yet together they blend into the predictable world we know. Like countless raindrops forming a smooth river, the chaos beneath becomes calm at the surface. That's why you don't dissolve into multiple versions each time you choose what to eat. The branching still happens, perhaps, but each version flows away, too distant to see. And yet, even if we can't feel it, maybe we sense its echo. The moment before you decide, when time seems to pause, the hesitation itself may be your mind's awareness of possibility, the quiet shimmer of choices before one becomes real. Maybe that's what intuition really is, the faint vibration of futures brushing past each other. When two particles become linked, what scientists call entangled, their fates intertwine, no matter how far apart they travel. If one spins, the other spins in a way that complements it, as though they're still whispering to each other across the void. This doesn't mean they send signals faster than light. Rather, it means their stories were written together from the start. Entanglement, in its simplest poetry, is connection that distance cannot erase. You've likely felt something like it, in human terms, the moment you think of someone and they call, or when a loved one far away seems to share your mood without a word. Science will tell you it's coincidence, and perhaps it is. But the feeling itself is real, a reminder that we are beings wired for resonance. On a cosmic scale, resonance may be the most ancient law of all. And here is where the boundary between physics and philosophy begins to blur. If particles can exist in states of shared potential, could minds built from those particles experience something similar? Could consciousness be a kind of large-scale entanglement? Not in the strict mathematical sense, but as a metaphor for unity. We do not know, and we must be careful not to claim what cannot yet be shown. But the image itself is beautiful. Awareness as the universe recognizing itself through countless mirrors, each reflecting a fragment of the whole. When you dream, you step into that metaphor. You become observer and participant at once, collapsing possibilities into experiences only you can feel. Every emotion, every symbol, every surreal twist in your dreams is like a small act of quantum creation, the mind weaving its own probabilities into form. And when you wake, one version remains, solidified into memory, while the others drift away into the unmeasured sea. Perhaps the quantum world isn't as far from the dreaming mind as it seems. Both speak the same quiet language, the language of potential. Both hover between what is and what might be. Both remind us that reality, at its heart, is not a rigid wall but a field of unfolding possibility. So the next time you find yourself hesitating between two choices, two paths, two versions of who you could become, remember, the universe itself hesitates with you. Somewhere in that pause, between the flicker of maybe and the whisper of yes, all realities are still dancing, waiting for you to notice their hidden rhythm. If the universe truly holds infinite possibilities, why do we only experience one? Why doesn't your breakfast blur into every meal you might have chosen, or your body split into 1,000 versions every time you turn a corner? Something must quiet the chaos. Something must persuade the universe to choose a single path, at least from where you stand. In the language of physics, that process is called decoherence. But let's not think of it as an equation or a calculation. Let's think of it as the moment dawn breaks over the fog of possibility, when the air clears and the world solidifies into the shape you recognize as now. At the smallest scale, everything, electrons, photons, even the molecules that form your thoughts, exists as a wave of potential outcomes. Each wave is a soft blur of where and what something could be. But when these waves interact with their surroundings, with light, air, heat, or even a stray particle, they lose their delicate balance. The possibilities interfere and cancel out, leaving behind just one visible story. It's as though the universe too needs an audience. The moment it's touched, the curtain falls and the scene is set. To visualize it, imagine a pond at sunrise. When it's perfectly still, every ripple mirrors the sky. Delicate, precise, endless. But the moment a pebble drops, the ripples collide, overlap, and blur the reflection. The image of the sky is lost in motion. In the same way, the universe's perfect quantum superpositions, those fragile ripples of maybe, collapse into the familiar patterns of matter and time as soon as they're disturbed. Decoherence is nature's gentle way of saying, the dream is over, the story begins. It's a silent, continuous process happening all around and within you. Every atom in your body is constantly interacting with trillions of others, exchanging tiny packets of information that fix them into place. In these interactions, the infinite becomes finite, the possible becomes real. The equations describe it in mathematical waves. But beneath that abstraction lies a simple image, possibility condensing into form, like mist crystallizing into frost. What's astonishing is that this act of choosing doesn't require consciousness. It's not the universe waiting for you to look. It happens naturally, relentlessly, with or without an observer. Reality seems to have a built-in tendency toward definiteness, a way of settling into its own shape. And yet, the versions that could have been do not vanish entirely. They drift beyond reach, each world carrying on in its own silence. This is what some physicists call branching. Each interaction creates a fork in the road. One version of the world contains your hand on the cup, another, perhaps, where you reached for something else. Both are real, but each separated by that thin veil of decoherence. Once parted, they can no longer meet. There is no whisper between them, no thread to weave them back together. It's like music that splits into harmony. The notes resonate together for an instant, then drift into their own melodies, never quite touching again. But even in this division, there's a kind of grace. Decoherence may sound like destruction, the breaking apart of unity, but in truth, it's creation. It is the act by which the universe writes its countless stories, each beginning from a single shimmer of chance. It's the way the infinite learns to express itself, one moment at a time. Without it, nothing would ever solidify. Everything would remain pure potential, like an unfinished dream. There's something quietly philosophical about that. Every time you make a decision, big or small, it's as if you're participating in that cosmic narrowing of paths. You collapse your own possibilities into one lived reality. The rest continues somewhere beyond your awareness, invisible but imagined. It's comforting in a way to think that the choices you didn't make might still unfold elsewhere, carried by versions of you who took the other turn. They're not ghosts, just alternative melodies still playing in the vast orchestra of being. The poet Rilke once wrote, "The future enters into us, long before it happens." Maybe that's what decoherence feels like. The future quietly arriving, solidifying from the mist of potential into the tangible moment you can touch. You don't feel the universe deciding, but you sense the aftermath, the weight of reality settling gently around you, the clarity of now. In the laboratory, scientists can measure fragments of this process. They cool atoms close to absolute stillness so that their quantum waves can spread and overlap, preserving the fragile shimmer of possibility for a little longer. The tiniest touch, light, warmth, even a trace of air destroys it. The dream collapses. This is why the quantum world remains invisible to our everyday senses. We live in the afterglow of constant decoherence, in a universe that's already chosen its version of the story billions of times before we arrive. And yet, if you listen closely, perhaps some of that shimmering remains inside us. The brain, though massive compared to atoms, still hosts patterns of electrical waves that rise and fade like probabilities. The conscious mind might be the bridge between the quantum and the classical, the place where possibility becomes perception. When you imagine a future, when you weigh decisions, when you dream, you are, in a very real, very poetic sense, performing a small act of coherence. You hold multiple realities in your awareness side by side before letting one emerge into action. So decoherence isn't just a concept in physics, it's an everyday miracle we live within. It's what allows time to feel directional, memory to feel anchored, identity to feel stable. It's the still point around which all chaos turns. Without it, we would dissolve into all our might-have-beens, with no way to tell the story of who we are. And perhaps that's why dreams feel so strange. When you sleep, the mind loosens its grip on coherence. It allows realities to overlap again, to blur and blend as they once did before waking. In dreams, the rules soften. The laws of cause and effect, time and distance, momentarily forget themselves. It's a nightly rehearsal of what the universe once was, pure possibility, shifting and luminous. When you wake, decoherence resumes, the possibilities quiet. The single version of the world returns as it must. But a trace of that ancient shimmer remains, hidden in the edges of memory, reminding you that certainty is just one rhythm in a larger cosmic song. Somewhere, beneath all the noise of daily life, the universe is still dancing between maybes, writing and rewriting the script of existence, one breath, one thought, one gentle decision at a time. When scientists talk about the quantum world, they often use words like uncertainty, probability, and superposition. When philosophers talk about consciousness, they use words like awareness, experience, and mind. And yet, somewhere between these two vocabularies, there's an unsettling sense of overlap, a quiet suspicion that the rules of one might whisper to the mysteries of the other. Could consciousness and the quantum world be linked, not in a mechanical way, but in the deep poetry of how both refuse to be pinned down? For decades, this question has fascinated scientists, mystics, and dreamers alike. Some have suggested that the mind itself might be a quantum instrument, its thoughts flickering between possibilities before deciding which one becomes reality. Others have dismissed that as romantic nonsense, insisting that the brain is far too warm, too noisy, too chemical to preserve anything so delicate as quantum coherence. But the discussion persists because at the heart of both fields, physics and consciousness, lies the same haunting riddle. How does potential become actual? How does awareness arise from matter? To begin softly, imagine the mind not as a machine, but as a vast stage. Every neuron is a performer, every spark of electricity a line of dialogue. The play unfolds moment by moment, thoughts entering and exiting like actors guided by unseen cues. But who or what is the audience? When you close your eyes and observe your own thoughts, who is doing the seeing? This question, the sense of a self that watches even as it acts, has no easy answer. And here, the quantum world lends a peculiar metaphor. In quantum mechanics, a system can exist in many possible states at once, until observation draws a line, transforming probability into a specific outcome. Some thinkers have wondered, could consciousness be part of that transformation? Could awareness itself be the universe looking at its own stage, turning shimmering potential into tangible experience? It's a poetic notion, though not an easy one to test. The equations of physics make no mention of mind, and yet, the more we study consciousness, the more we realize how entangled we are with the reality we observe. Two scientists, Roger Penrose, a physicist, and Stuart Hameroff, an anesthesiologist, once proposed a daring idea. They called it the orchestrated objective reduction, or OR for short. Their thought was that deep inside the brain's cells, in structures called microtubules, quantum processes might take place. These microtubules, they suggested, could maintain tiny vibrations, quantum rhythms, that give rise to moments of awareness. Consciousness, in their view, would not be a simple computation but a fundamental feature of the universe, expressed through living systems. It's a beautiful image. Each flicker of thought is a quantum event, a tiny shimmer of the cosmos awakening within itself. But other researchers, like physicist Max Tegmark, approached the same idea with skepticism. He calculated how quickly quantum states would lose their coherence inside the warm, wet environment of the brain. The result was astonishingly short, so brief that any such process would vanish long before a single neuron could respond. The mind, he argued, behaves in classical terms. Its magic arises from patterns, not from quantum physics. And yet, the debate refuses to sleep. Because even if the brain doesn't need quantum effects to function, the language of quantum theory still offers a haunting mirror for what it feels like to be conscious. In dreams, thoughts overlap and interfere like waves, Multiple emotions coexist without contradiction, collapsing into clarity only when you wake. Awareness itself feels both local and infinite, rooted in a body, yet capable of imagining the cosmos. In that sense, consciousness behaves like a superposition, many states of being existing together until attention chooses one to focus on. Think of a moment when you stand between decisions. You see both futures, both outcomes. You imagine yourself walking each path, feeling the difference in your chest before either becomes real. That's consciousness playing its own quantum game, the art of holding possibility without yet choosing. When you finally act, your mind collapses the wave of potential into a single timeline, and life continues. The unchosen futures fade, but they leave traces behind. Intuition, nostalgia, dreams. This delicate interplay between choice and awareness is what gives consciousness its mystery. It's what makes you feel like both the observer and the observed, the dreamer and the dream. Perhaps that's why the metaphor of a quantum theatre fits so naturally. On that stage, probability and perception waltz together. The actors are made of atoms, the script written in the laws of nature, yet the performance, awareness itself, seems to transcend its material parts. Even if the mind doesn't rely on quantum mechanics, the two share a deeper kinship. They both reveal how incomplete our understanding of reality still is. In physics, the act of observing changes what is observed. In consciousness, the act of self-awareness changes who we are. Both defy the notion of separation. Both suggest that the boundary between subject and object, between the dreamer and the dream, might be thinner than we imagine. There's also something profoundly human about the desire to connect these mysteries. We don't like gaps in our understanding. We long for unity. The idea that mind and matter might be two expressions of the same underlying truth, two harmonies in one grand composition, feels intuitively right, even if it remains unproven. Perhaps what draws us to this connection isn't science at all, but empathy, the recognition that everything, from a photon to a person, participates in the same unfolding story of existence. So rather than asking whether consciousness is quantum, perhaps it's gentler to say that both are expressions of the same wonder, the universe's ability to hold many possibilities and then become one of them. Each thought, each dream, each observation is a small version of that miracle. Awareness doesn't simply watch the cosmos, it completes it, translating equations into experience, turning vibration into meaning, and giving the cold machinery of physics the warmth of perspective. In the end, whether or not quantum mechanics explains consciousness, the metaphor remains a bridge between two ways of knowing. Physics describes what happens, experience reveals what it feels like. Between them stretches a space, quiet, luminous, unknowable, where thought and reality meet. Perhaps that's where dreams are born, at the intersection of potential and perception, in the quantum theatre where the universe and the mind take turns being the audience. Imagine two people standing miles apart, gazing at the same night sky. The stars between them are ancient, their light older than memory, yet in that single shared glance there's a strange sense of connection. You might call it coincidence, or empathy, or something subtler still, a quiet resonance that needs no words. Physics has its own version of this feeling. It's called entanglement, and though it belongs to the smallest pieces of reality, the metaphor seems to stretch easily into the human heart. In the quantum world, when two particles interact, they can become linked in a way that defies common sense. Measure one, and the other seems to know instantly how to respond, even if it's far away. It's as though their properties were choreographed together from the beginning, their fates written in the same breath. This doesn't mean one particle sends a signal faster than light. It's more subtle. They share a hidden story, a kind of cosmic memory that keeps them in sync. Einstein, both fascinated and troubled by this, called it spooky action at a distance. But we can understand it more gently. Imagine two dancers who rehearse a duet. When the performance begins, they stand on opposite ends of the stage, each moving to the same music. They don't see each other, yet their steps align perfectly because they both remember the rhythm they practiced together. Entangled particles are like that, partners still dancing to a tune set long ago. Their connection is not through space, but through memory. Now, some thinkers have wondered, if the universe allows such harmony at the level of particles, could something similar happen in minds? Could consciousness, built from the same atoms, still carry a trace of that entanglement, linking us in ways we can feel but not measure? It's a seductive idea, one that speaks to our deepest longing for unity. After all, haven't we all felt it? The thought of a loved one before the phone rings, the sudden pull of emotion that seems to belong to someone else, the dream that feels shared. Science approaches these experiences with caution. Most such moments can be explained by coincidence, shared environment, or the brain's natural pattern seeking. Still, the emotional truth remains powerful. Whether or not minds are truly entangled, we behave as if they are. Empathy itself may be a biological echo of that cosmic choreography, a resonance of neurons mirroring the feelings of others so deeply that joy and sorrow become contagious. In this sense, entanglement might not be a physical bridge between people, but a poetic one, reminding us that connection is our most fundamental state. There were experiments long ago that tried to test the boundaries of this mystery. In the 1970s, researchers placed pairs of identical twins in separate rooms and monitored their brain activity. When one twin was shown flashing lights, scientists watched the other's brain for signs of response. Sometimes they found tiny correlations, other times nothing at all. The results were inconclusive, perhaps because what they were looking for can't be caught by instruments designed to measure only matter. And yet, even as the data remain uncertain, the stories persist. Across cultures and generations, people have spoken of shared dreams, of emotions transmitted silently across distance, of knowing before knowing. Whether mystical or metaphorical, these stories all point to the same human desire, that separation is not the final truth. Physics gives us both hope and humility here. Entanglement shows that nature is capable of deep, instantaneous coordination, but it also tells us that this coordination carries no message, no secret telegraph through the void. It cannot be used to send information or to cheat the speed of light. The universe remains consistent even in its strangeness. What entanglement offers is not communication, but correlation, proof that once connected, always connected, even if the link lies beyond reach. There's beauty in that restraint. It tells us that the universe remembers its own interactions. Every meeting, every touch, leaves a trace that can never be entirely erased. In a quiet way, that's what memory is too, the human form of entanglement. Two people share an experience, then walk away changed. They carry fragments of each other, woven into their minds. When they meet again, even after years, something recognizes the familiar rhythm. Their stories remain correlated long after the moment has passed. Perhaps dreams are the same, echoes of our connections replayed in the theatre of the subconscious. When you dream of someone you've loved, your brain may be reactivating the neural pathways once lit by their presence. Science calls it memory consolidation. The heart calls it missing someone. Either way, in that moment, the boundary between distance and closeness dissolves. You feel them there, not as a ghost or signal, but as a living pattern within you. It's tempting to believe this resonance extends beyond space and time. Maybe when we think of another person with deep feeling, something aligns. Two minds turning toward the same frequency, like tuning forks singing across a room. Whether or not the physics allows it, the metaphor remains powerful, that empathy itself is a form of non-local connection, a reminder that the universe's first language was relationship. Entanglement, after all, is not rare. Every atom in your body has interacted with countless others, exchanging energy, information and light. The air you breathe, the starlight on your skin, the water in your veins, they've all been part of something else, someone else, long before reaching you. In that sense, the universe is a web of constant entanglement, a single story told in endless variations. We are made from shared matter and shared history, stitched together by the quiet memory of the cosmos. So when we ask whether minds can be entangled, perhaps the truer question is this: how could they not be? We are built from the same ingredients, shaped by the same forces, animated by the same spark. The boundary between you and the rest of existence is thinner than it feels. Your thoughts ripple outward, touching others in ways both visible and invisible. Every word, every kindness, every glance is a small act of quantum empathy, waves meeting, colliding, and reshaping one another in the ocean of awareness. In the end, the loophole we long for, the bridge across solitude, might not be hidden in physics at all. It may live in the way we listen, in the way we dream, in the way we feel each other's presence even in silence. Entanglement reminds us that the universe was born connected, that separation is a temporary illusion. Whether we share dreams through particles or through love, the result is the same. Somewhere, the cosmos is still dancing with itself, and every time you care for another being, you take part in that eternal dance. Dreams have always been the meeting point between what we know and what we hope might be true. They arrive quietly, wearing the language of symbols instead of logic, speaking through images rather than words. Sometimes they seem like memory rearranged, other times like prophecy spoken by someone who knows us better than we know ourselves. But there is another idea, more daring, that lingers in the borderlands of science and imagination, the notion that dreams might not be private at all. What if, in the stillness of sleep, the walls between minds grow thinner, allowing one consciousness to brush against another? This is what some have called the shared dream hypothesis, the possibility that, in the deep ocean of sleep, waves from one mind might ripple across to another, or even across different versions of reality itself. It's a question that has haunted storytellers, mystics, and researchers alike. Could two dreamers meet somewhere that exists only in the overlap of their imagination? Modern science doesn't offer an easy yes or no. There have been experiments, small, fragile, human attempts to catch the uncatchable. In the mid-20th century, at a place called the Maimonides Medical Center in New York, researchers tried something extraordinary. They invited people to sleep in dark, silent rooms, while others in another building attempted to send them images through thought alone. When the dreamers were gently awakened, they described what they saw. Sometimes, astonishingly, the images seemed to match: the colour of a landscape, the feeling of a scene, the outline of a face. Other nights, there was nothing at all but ordinary dreaming. The results were intriguing but inconsistent, balancing on the edge between coincidence and mystery. Skeptics saw nothing more than the mind's talent for pattern making, its hunger for meaning in the noise. Believers saw evidence that awareness might be broader than the body that holds it. And between them lay a quiet truth, that human beings have always wanted connection to be deeper than distance, and dreams are the most natural place to imagine it. There are stories, plenty of them, about twin dreams, siblings who, sleeping miles apart, describe the same strange forest, the same house filled with light, the same whispered phrase, lovers separated by continents who wake at the same moment from a dream of reunion, parents who dream of a child calling for help at the very hour that child wakes sick in the night. Anecdotes, yes, but they repeat too often to dismiss entirely. Whether or not they prove a hidden channel between minds, they prove something else, that the longing to be connected finds its expression even when we sleep. Maybe that's why every culture has its version of this story. The Greeks believed the god Morpheus could carry messages between dreamers. Indigenous peoples of North America spoke of dream circles, where visions were shared for the good of the tribe. In the East, ancient texts described teachers appearing in the dreams of disciples across mountains and oceans. Even today, in a world of screens and satellites, we speak of feeling someone's presence, of being on the same wavelength. The language of shared dreaming never really left us. It just changed its costume. Science, with its cautious steps, reminds us that the evidence is thin. The instruments we have, the wires, the scanners, the charts, can map the rhythms of the brain, but not the poetry of experience. When two people dream of the same image, it may be the mind-shared archive at work, the collective symbolism carved by evolution and culture. We all know the feeling of falling, the chase we cannot escape, the strange calm of flight. These universal dreams rise from a common anatomy, not necessarily a common dream space. The same chemicals, the same neural storms, the same ancient emotions swirl within us all, and yet perhaps the boundary between shared biology and shared mystery is thinner than it seems. If each mind is a kind of radio, tuned to the frequencies of emotion and memory, then perhaps dreaming is when the dial turns just enough to pick up faint echoes from other transmitters. Not words or images exactly, but moods, vibrations of thought that cross the silence between us. You may have woken from a dream heavy with sadness or sweetness you couldn't explain, only to find that someone close to you felt the same before dawn. Coincidence, maybe. But coincidence has always been the polite face of wonder. There's also another possibility, one that reaches beyond the visible universe. If the multiverse truly exists, if there are infinite versions of you dreaming under infinite skies, then perhaps the shared dream is not with another person, but with another self. The same pattern of mind, vibrating across realities, might hum in unison for a moment, creating a resonance that feels like recognition. You dream of walking through a door, and somewhere else another you dreams of stepping through it. You wake, heart racing, not knowing why. Maybe it was the echo of a parallel breath. Of course, we must keep both feet on the ground. The shared dream hypothesis remains unproven, suspended between anecdote and imagination. But maybe its real power isn't in proof. Maybe it's in what it reveals about us, that we are creatures of connection, unable to accept that consciousness ends where skin begins. We build bridges out of stories, and dreams are the oldest bridge of all. Perhaps that's why, even when the experiments fail, the fascination endures. Deep down, we suspect that dreaming itself is a form of communication, not necessarily between people, but between the layers of the self, between the waking mind and the deeper ocean beneath. Each night, your consciousness sends messages in bottles to itself, carrying fragments of truth wrapped in metaphor. Some wash ashore in the morning, others drift into mystery. And so, the whisper between worlds might not be a literal voice passing from one mind to another. It could be the collective murmur of a species trying to understand itself, each dreamer listening to echoes of the same great story told in countless variations. Whether those whispers travel through space, time, or simply the shared language of emotion doesn't matter as much as the fact that we keep hearing them and answering back. Dreams remind us that separation is never complete. Even if the walls between minds are solid, they are not absolute. Beneath the noise of individuality, there hums a deeper continuity, the pulse of life itself, resonating through every sleeping heart. And in that rhythm, perhaps, lies the truest form of shared dreaming. Not an exchange of pictures or words, but the simple recognition that every one of us drifts each night through the same darkness, guided by the same light of curiosity. Maybe that's enough, that in sleep, we're all travellers on parallel roads, dreaming variations of the same desire, to reach out, to touch, to be known. The whisper between worlds might not come from elsewhere at all. It may simply be the sound of the universe remembering that we were never really apart. Across the long story of humankind, dreams have never been something we simply owned. They were something we shared. Long before sleep was mapped by machines, before psychologists traced its cycles or neuroscientists measured its waves, people believed that the world of dreams was not private property. It was a public field, a common ground where gods, ancestors and living souls could meet. In that older imagination, you didn't just fall asleep. You crossed a border, and on the other side you entered a collective landscape that belonged to everyone who ever dreamed. In ancient Greece, entire temples were built for this purpose. The dream temples of Asclepius stood as places where the sick came not to see doctors, but to sleep. They would lie on stone beds, surrounded by statues of serpents and divine healers, hoping that in the night a dream would bring a cure. Priests moved softly through the halls, interpreting the visions at dawn, reading the mind of the god in the private imagery of mortals. Those who dreamed of water or light were told they would heal soon. Those who saw darkness were urged to return again. To dream there was to take part in a sacred dialogue, the boundary between the divine and human as thin as silk. Elsewhere in the world, the idea was no less vivid. Among indigenous peoples of North America, dreams were treated as messages shared with the tribe, not personal secrets. In some nations, families gathered at sunrise to recount what they had seen. If two or more people described the same symbol, a river, an eagle, a storm, it was taken as a sign that the community had received guidance together. Dreams were a kind of social memory, stitched into the rhythm of survival. They shaped hunting rituals, migrations, and even the telling of myths. Far to the east, ancient Chinese and Tibetan traditions spoke of mutual dreaming, where teacher and student could meet beyond the body. The master would appear in the disciple's dream, not as fantasy but as instruction, a continuation of learning that never ceased, not even at night. In these traditions, dreaming wasn't an escape from reality. It was another classroom, another field of practice, another way the mind could reach beyond itself. Every culture, in its own way, treated dreams as threads in a single fabric, woven by countless hands. This belief may sound mystical to modern ears, but perhaps it carried an intuition science is only beginning to echo, that human consciousness, though individually housed, may be deeply relational. Just as air carries every breath we exhale, the atmosphere of culture might carry our shared symbols, our collective imagination. Even in times and places that prized rationality, the collective power of dreams persisted. During the early 20th century, Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung studied the dreamscape as a mirror of the psyche. Freud saw each dream as an intimate whisper from the subconscious, a coded confession. Jung, however, sensed something larger, what he called the collective unconscious, a reservoir of images that belonged to all people. He noticed recurring patterns, heroes, mothers, shadows, circles, endless journeys, and realized that no culture dreamed in isolation. Beneath language, geography, and time, the human mind spoke one mythic tongue. That idea feels both ancient and modern. Jung's vision of archetypes was, in its own way, a scientific version of the old dream temples, proof that our inner worlds overlap. We may not share dreams word for word, but we share their grammar, the symbols through which the psyche speaks. Now, in the age of light and glass screens, the ancient dream circle has moved into a new form. Every night, millions of people scroll through their phones before sleeping, carrying the images of strangers into their subconscious. Online, we exchange our dreams instantly, describing them in digital public spaces. A century ago, a dream might have been told to a few close companions by the morning fire. Today, it can be told to the entire planet before breakfast. The collective dreaming that once happened in temples and tribal gatherings now happens on social networks, a web of imagination glowing through fibre and signal, the human subconscious translated into pixels. And just as ancient people compared their dreams for meaning, we compare our digital ones for connection. Algorithms map our shared fascinations, turning them into new myths: superheroes, apocalypses, love stories, fears of loss. The difference is only in scale. The human mind still seeks to dream together, whether through ritual or technology. The internet, in its strange way, is our new dream temple, chaotic, luminous, communal. It shows that even in waking life, our thoughts are no longer solitary. Perhaps what has changed most is not the content of our dreams, but the way we interpret them. Where ancient people saw messages from gods, we now see reflections of the self. Yet the hunger for shared meaning remains. We still look for signs that our dreams connect us, that we are part of something larger than a single mind. Maybe this is why certain dream symbols have never disappeared. Falling, flying, being chased, standing on a vast shore. These scenes recur across centuries because they belong to something collective, a kind of species-wide language of emotion. Some scientists might say this repetition is simply anatomy at work. The human brain, regardless of culture, builds its worlds from the same architecture of neurons: fear, desire, curiosity. They're written in similar circuits. So of course our dreams resemble one another's. They're shaped by the same tools. But that explanation doesn't erase the poetry, it deepens it. Because even if the similarity is biological, it still means that every one of us carries inside the same universal pattern, the same quiet song of the species. And when you think about it, the idea of shared dreaming might not require telepathy or mystical portals at all. It may simply reflect the truth that every human heart beats in time with others. We breathe the same air, live beneath the same sky, and fall asleep under the same moonlight. The symbols we dream are the common language of our shared condition. The ache of being alive, the wonder of not being alone. So when you hear about those old dream temples or the circles of storytellers greeting the sunrise, you're not just hearing about the past. You're hearing the echo of something timeless, the need to find meaning together, to understand that the dreams inside you are not yours alone. You're part of a vast chorus, each voice humming the same melody through different verses. And maybe the next time you share a dream with someone, telling it over coffee or whispering it to a friend, you'll feel a faint connection to that lineage. You'll be doing what countless generations have done, turning the solitude of the night into a story that brings people closer by morning. Because in the end, whether through temples, tribes, or technology, the dream has always been our most ancient form of conversation, the mind's way of remembering that it belongs to a greater whole. There are moments in waking life that feel like dreams, small, fleeting flashes that make the world shimmer with familiarity. You walk into a room you've never seen before, and something deep inside whispers, "I've been here." The light falls in a certain way, a sentence hangs in the air, and for a heartbeat the present folds back upon itself. Then it's gone, leaving only the soft ache of recognition without a source. We call it déjà vu, the strange memory of something that never happened. Science has its careful language for this phenomenon. It tells us that déjà vu may arise when the brain's systems for recognition and recollection misfire, when the circuitry that signals familiarity sparks before the one that recalls context. It's like hearing the echo of a song before the first note is played. The temporal lobe, the part of the brain that weaves memory into time, fires a little too eagerly, painting a new moment with the colour of an old one. The result is a gentle illusion. Your mind mistakes the present for a memory, a ripple in the synchrony of perception. But knowing the mechanism doesn't dissolve the mystery. Even if déjà vu is a neurological flicker, it still feels like something more. A reminder from another life, a whisper from a parallel path. Some describe it as the self, recognizing itself from another timeline, a brief nod across realities. The many worlds view of the universe offers a poetic mirror for this feeling. If every choice gives birth to a new branch of reality, perhaps déjà vu is when two branches align for a breath. The same pattern, repeating across universes before drifting apart again. You don't have to believe in literal multiverses to feel the resonance. Déjà vu might simply be the mind's way of acknowledging its own vastness, the echo of countless remembered moments folded into one. Each experience you've ever had leaves an imprint, a network of associations. When a new moment resembles one of those patterns closely enough, the brain lights up in recognition. It says, "This belongs to the pattern of me." For a second, you see not just one thread of life, but the tapestry itself. Recurring dreams are their own kind of déjà vu, looping through the night like refrains. You find yourself again in the same city of endless corridors, the same rising wave, the same unspoken task. They can be unsettling or comforting, depending on what they bring. Psychologists often say these dreams replay unresolved emotions, the mind's way of knocking on the same door until it's finally opened. But there's another way to see them, as the rhythm of consciousness reminding itself of what it's made of. Across the world, the same dream motifs recur in different people: falling, flying, being chased, standing in a crowd and realizing you're invisible. They are as universal as heartbeat and breath. Perhaps these scenes arise from shared biology, the brain's common architecture. Or perhaps they are archetypes, the shapes that consciousness takes when it tells its own story. The specifics differ, but the feeling is the same, a mix of fear, freedom, and recognition. When you dream of falling, the body rehearses surrender. When you dream of flight, it rehearses transcendence. These are not just personal fantasies, they are ancient rituals of the mind. So when you experience déjà vu in waking life, or find yourself returning to the same dream again and again, it might help to see it not as error but as resonance. It's the mind remembering itself, testing the edges of time. The neurons and chemicals that make memory are physical, yes, but memory itself behaves like music, able to repeat, to echo, to reappear in new arrangements. In that sense, déjà vu is not a malfunction, but a melody replayed, the universe humming a familiar tune through the instrument of your awareness. There's a quiet beauty in realizing that both waking déjà vu and dreaming déjà vu point to the same truth. Experience is never entirely linear. We live inside patterns, spirals, recurrences. The past isn't gone. It lingers as potential, waiting to harmonize with the present. Sometimes it does, and for a moment we feel the shimmer of alignment, the echo of another you, reaching through the folds of memory. Some cultures have long treated this sensation as sacred. In certain Buddhist traditions, a flash of déjà vu during meditation is seen as the mind brushing against traces of previous lives, a brief window into continuity beyond death. In mystical Christianity, the feeling of familiarity in holy places was called anamnesis, a remembering of something eternal that the soul already knows. Science calls it neural coincidence, yet even science agrees that memory is reconstructive, that each recall rewrites the past anew. So perhaps déjà vu is that rewriting catching itself in the act, a small awareness of how memory and reality are never quite separate. You might notice it in dreams too. You walk down the same street, recognize the same house, open the same door. Inside, the furniture has changed, but the air is the same. It's as though the dream rebuilds itself from an older blueprint each night, making small edits until it feels complete. When you finally resolve what the dream has been asking, perhaps by forgiving, perhaps by understanding, it vanishes. Its work is done. That rhythm of return and release mirrors life itself, lessons repeating until the heart has learned them deeply enough to let them rest. If déjà vu and recurring dreams reveal anything, it's that the mind is not confined to straight lines of time. It moves in circles, weaving yesterday into tomorrow. And within those circles there may be countless versions of you, all learning the same truth from slightly different angles. The you who stands here now carries their echoes, their lessons, their unfinished songs. Every moment of familiarity is a reminder that the self is not singular, but layered, a chord rather than a note. So the next time you feel that eerie flicker of recognition, don't rush to dismiss it. Pause, breathe. You're standing at a small intersection of realities, memory, imagination, biology, and something deeper. You are the meeting point of countless possibilities, a being who has dreamed this place before in some form, perhaps in this life, perhaps in another. The sensation is your consciousness nodding to itself, whispering, "I remember." Maybe déjà vu is not a glitch in the brain, nor a hint of parallel worlds, but a simple kindness, a way for existence to reassure you that you are on the right path, walking a road that fits the pattern of your soul. The world feels familiar because it is yours, written in your language, sung in your rhythm. You have been here, in some way, always, and when the moment passes, as it always does, it leaves behind a quiet gratitude. The awareness that every step you take might be part of a dance you've been practicing across lifetimes. Every night, as the world closes its eyes, a quiet symphony begins beneath the skull. To the outside observer, a sleeper lies still, the body surrendered, the breath slow. But inside, the brain hums with light and motion. Billions of neurons spark like constellations in an unseen sky, weaving together patterns of thought, memory, and emotion. It is a theatre with no audience and no script, where the mind tells itself stories drawn from the fragments of its day. In these stories, we rehearse, repair, and rediscover who we are. Neuroscience has spent decades trying to map this nightly miracle. The instruments have improved, the language has softened. Scientists can now trace the delicate rhythm of brain waves as we drift through stages of sleep, the slow tides of deep rest, the gentle surges of dreaming. They call one stage rapid eye movement, named for the small flutter beneath closed lids, but let's think of it as the mind's sunrise. During this phase, the brain becomes paradoxically active. The limbic regions that govern emotion blaze bright, while the parts responsible for logic and restraint grow quiet. It's a landscape where feeling outruns reason, where memories loosen their anchors and drift into new constellations. Imagine the brain as a vast library that stays open all night. Each dream is a librarian walking through the aisles, taking down old books, cross-referencing chapters, binding scattered pages into new stories. When you wake, you carry the edits, not the process. You don't remember the sorting, only the strange tale it created. Yet something inside has shifted. A memory once heavy with pain now feels lighter. A fear has softened. This is not magic. It is biology doing its gentlest work. Researchers have shown that during dreaming, the brain revisits emotional experiences from waking life, replaying them without the full charge of stress chemicals. It's as if the mind sets the memory on a workbench, examines it, and polishes away its sharp edges. That's why, after a night's rest, grief can feel more bearable, and ideas once tangled suddenly make sense. The dreaming brain performs quiet maintenance on the soul. And what's most fascinating is that this process happens in almost every human mind, across cultures, languages, and continents. When you dream, you join an invisible network of billions of others doing the same. We don't share the content of our dreams, but we share the mechanism, the nightly rehearsal that keeps our species emotionally balanced. Like an orchestra tuning before dawn, every instrument plays its part, each unaware of the others, yet all contributing to the same vast harmony. The similarities go deeper than we imagine. Scientists who study sleep across different populations have found that dream patterns are surprisingly universal. People everywhere dream of being chased, falling, flying, or searching for something lost, The scenery changes, the symbols shift, but the emotional core remains the same. Fear, hope, longing, curiosity. It's as if the architecture of the brain composes similar stories from similar tools. The result is a kind of collective myth-making that renews itself every night. This shared architecture suggests that while dreams may feel intensely personal, they arise from the same biological blueprint. The human brain, regardless of language or culture, is built to feel deeply, imagine vividly, and seek meaning in chaos. When one mind dreams, it does so with the same chemistry and structure as every other. That's why two strangers, continents apart, can wake with the same images lingering. A vast ocean, a forgotten city, a face half remembered. We are many dreamers, but we dream with the same materials. Think of it as millions of painters working from the same palette. Each canvas is unique, but the colours are drawn from the same source. Shared biology, shared emotion, shared history. It's no wonder then that dreams often echo each other. They are variations on the same human themes, melodies played on different instruments. In that sense, we do dream together, not through mysterious telepathy, but through the quiet universality of being alive. Our brains are tuned to the same frequencies of need and wonder. We all long for safety, love, purpose, release. The stories our minds invent in sleep are simply reflections of those longings, filtered through memory and imagination. When you dream of flying, someone else, somewhere else, is probably doing the same. Even animals join the chorus. Cats twitch as they dream of hunting. Dogs whimper softly as they chase ghosts of motion. Studies show their sleeping brains follow rhythms much like ours. Consciousness, it seems, doesn't rest when the body does. It continues to create, to explore, to simulate. Nature, in its endless efficiency, discovered that storytelling is survival. To dream is to practice life safely, to learn without consequence, to imagine new ways of being. It's humbling to realize that this nightly rehearsal has been happening for as long as life has known rest. Long before humans built cities or named the stars, creatures were already entering that hidden world to weave experience into instinct. The same electrical hum that powers your dream tonight once flickered inside the first mammals sheltering in prehistoric dark. To dream is to belong to an unbroken lineage of remembering, and so, when you drift to sleep, you join a vast continuum, ancient and modern, personal and collective. The boundaries that divide you from others soften. Your memories mingle with inherited patterns far older than words. Somewhere another sleeper turns in their bed, their eyes moving beneath closed lids. They're travelling a landscape that mirrors yours, guided by the same forces, carried by the same tides. You may never meet them, yet your dreams are cousins, born of the same cosmic mind that learns through imagination. Perhaps this is why dreams often feel like they carry a message, not from outside but from the shared intelligence within. They remind us that consciousness is communal, that the very act of being alive connects us to every other living thing that sleeps and dreams. You don't need a mystical link for that to be profound. The simple truth that every heartbeat joins a planetary rhythm is miracle enough. When you wake in the morning, you return to your individual story, but the trace of that connection remains. You carry it in the gentle calm after a good night's rest, in the empathy that lets you understand another's sorrow, in the creativity that finds solutions no logic could. Each of these is a small echo of the universal dreaming that shaped it. So even if we never prove that minds can truly share a single dream, we can be sure of this. We share the dream of being human. We share the fragile hope that tomorrow will make sense, that the world will be kind, that the unknown will not always frighten us. And every night, as billions of eyes close in unison, the earth hums with that collective wish, a quiet chorus of dreaming minds, each painting under the same moonlight, each remembering in its own way that we were never meant to dream alone. There's a moment, subtle and weightless, when a dreamer realizes, this isn't real, and yet I'm still here. The walls of the dream do not crumble. The sky remains, the air still hums with impossible colours, but suddenly you are aware of it all. You're both the actor and the observer, the story and the storyteller. This quiet, extraordinary state is known as lucid dreaming, the art of waking within sleep, of remembering yourself while the dream continues to unfold. To some, it begins accidentally. You find yourself walking through a forest that glows faintly, or standing on a shore where two suns rise. Something feels off. The laws of waking life don't apply. You think, almost casually, this must be a dream. The realization spreads like a sunrise through your mind, and for the first time, you see the dream for what it is, a world painted by thought itself. You might float upward, or simply watch, amazed as the details sharpen, the wind through trees that never existed, the taste of fruit that dissolves into light. The experience feels hyper-real, more vivid than waking life, as if the brain has turned its inner theatre into an open window. Neuroscientists have studied this phenomenon gently, trying to understand how a person can be both asleep and self-aware. Using brain imaging, they've found that certain regions, especially the one just behind your forehead, the seat of reflection and decision, light up again during lucid dreams. It's as though a small lantern rekindles in the night of the mind, illuminating the dream from within. Normally in deep sleep, that lantern is dim. The dream unfolds automatically, without question or control. But in lucidity, the sleeper regains a spark of wakeful awareness. The mind, for a brief time, becomes both the dreamer and the witness. What's most astonishing is how natural it feels. There's no jolt, no rupture between worlds. The awareness blooms quietly, like ink spreading through water, and in that calm realization, the dreamer gains a gentle kind of freedom. They can choose to fly, to walk through walls, to talk to imagined people as though they were real. Some use this freedom for adventure, others for exploration of the self. Psychologists see it as a rare chance to interact directly with the subconscious, to ask questions, face fears, or rehearse moments of courage in complete safety. Ancient cultures spoke of this long before modern science gave it a name. Tibetan Buddhists practiced what they called dream yoga, using lucidity not as entertainment but as spiritual training. To wake inside a dream was to glimpse the nature of reality itself, to see how perception builds worlds and how awareness can free itself from illusion. In those teachings, the dream became a rehearsal for awakening, the mind learning to stay conscious even as the universe shifts and dissolves around it. In a quieter, psychological sense, lucid dreaming shows us how creative and adaptable the human brain truly is. It reminds us that consciousness isn't an on-off switch, it's a spectrum. Even in deep sleep, a spark of self-recognition can emerge. It also shows how fluid our sense of real can be. When the dream feels solid, you believe in it completely. When it shatters, you awaken. But what if both are stages in the same theatre? What if reality itself is another dream, simply more consistent, more agreed upon by the billions who share it? Scientists sometimes explain the brain's ability to simulate worlds as a kind of internal laboratory, a predictive engine constantly testing models of reality. In dreams, that laboratory runs wild, freed from sensory input. It builds scenarios, emotions, and entire landscapes from memory and imagination alone. When lucidity arises, the dreamer doesn't escape this process. They join it consciously. You might say that the lucid dreamer becomes a co-creator, shaping the probability waves of thought into form, turning intention into imagery with astonishing immediacy. It's easy to see why this idea captures both scientists and poets. there's something profoundly symbolic in it. To become lucid in a dream is to wake up to the realization that the world around you is not fixed. It's shaped by your focus, your belief, your emotional gravity. That insight doesn't vanish when you wake. It lingers, whispering that perhaps life itself works the same way. Our attention sculpts our days. What we fear, we meet. What we love, we nurture. Consciousness, dreaming or waking, is always participating in the creation of experience. Some dreamers train themselves to reach this state deliberately. They keep journals beside the bed, writing down their dreams each morning, training memory to bridge the two worlds. They perform small reality checks during the day, looking at their hands, glancing twice at clocks, to cultivate the habit of questioning reality. Then, when the same habits appear in sleep, awareness blooms. It's a quiet art, not of control, but of attention. The first time someone becomes lucid, the excitement often wakes them immediately. The heart races, the scene flickers, and consciousness collapses back into wakefulness. But with practice, the balance grows steadier. The dreamer learns to breathe, to let the scene stabilize, to float rather than grasp. The trick is gentleness, the same lesson that applies to life itself. When you try to seize control, the moment slips away. When you simply observe, everything becomes clearer. There's a metaphor hiding there, and perhaps it's the reason lucid dreaming feels so meaningful. To wake within a dream is to realize that reality is never entirely solid, that awareness is the constant, the still point behind the changing images. Whether in sleep or in life, we are always somewhere between dreaming and waking, between acting and observing. Each moment asks us to balance between surrender and intention, between what we can shape and what we must accept. And when you think of it that way, lucid dreaming becomes more than a curiosity. It's a reminder that consciousness itself is capable of infinite degrees of presence. Even in the deepest night, a small light remains, the self that knows it is dreaming, the awareness that refuses to disappear. Perhaps that same light is what we glimpse in moments of sudden clarity during the day, when time slows and everything feels strangely vivid. It's the universe catching your eye, reminding you that you're part of the play and the audience all at once. So tonight, as you drift towards sleep, you might wonder not whether you can control your dreams, but whether you can meet them with awareness. When you realize you're dreaming, even for a second, don't rush to fly or to change the scene. Just look around. Feel the air, notice the colours, listen to the hum of that impossible world. You're witnessing the mind dreaming itself awake. And if that light can stay alive in the world of dreams, who's to say it isn't the same light guiding you through every waking day? Before the modern world named it sleep hygiene or resting habits, ancient civilizations already practiced a quiet art, preparing the mind for the dreams it wished to have. The Greeks called it incubatio, to lie down in sacred sleep and invite a vision. In Egypt, temples were built for this very purpose. Dreamers would bathe, fast and meditate before lying beneath painted ceilings of stars, waiting for guidance. Even now, thousands of years later, that same ritual lives on in subtler ways. We still whisper thoughts into the dark before we close our eyes. We still plant small seeds of intention, hoping that by morning, something inside us will have grown. Science has a newer term for this: dream incubation. It describes the practice of setting an intention before sleep, asking your mind to focus on a question, a memory or an emotion, and to return with an answer wrapped in dream language. It is less about control than collaboration, a partnership between the waking and the sleeping self. You don't command a dream as much as you invite it, like calling a bird to your open hand. The process is simple in form but deep in effect. It begins with awareness, deciding gently what you wish to dream about. Some people focus on problems they can't solve by daylight. Others seek understanding, forgiveness, or creative inspiration. A musician might fall asleep humming a half-finished melody, trusting that the mind will complete it. An artist might picture a blank canvas and wake to an image that feels inevitable. The brain, freed from the noise of the external world, rearranges the pieces of thought in ways logic could never attempt. What happens during dream incubation is not magic, but the mind's natural rhythm extended with care. When you set an intention before sleep, certain patterns of memory become more active. The neurons connected to those thoughts whisper more insistently through the night. During REM sleep, the phase when imagination ignites, these whispers become images, stories, sensations. The dream takes shape around the question you've planted. You might not receive an obvious answer, but you wake with a feeling, an insight, a quiet shift that changes how you see the problem. It's as if the subconscious has worked all night on your behalf. Some modern experiments have confirmed the effect in gentle, measurable ways. People ask to think of specific tasks before sleeping. Solving puzzles, remembering words, visualizing patterns often show improved performance the next day. The sleeping mind continues where the waking mind left off, sorting, simulating, testing. The language of science calls this memory consolidation, but for the dreamer, it feels like conversation. You ask, the deeper self responds. But dream incubation can also be emotional. You might focus on a person you wish to forgive or an event that still hurts. Instead of suppressing it, you hold it softly in your awareness before sleep, allowing it to settle into the stream of dreaming. In that space, where ego loses its armor, the mind can approach what the heart avoids. The dream may present the memory again, but gentler this time, reframed, surrounded by symbols of peace. When you wake, the edges have softened. Healing begins quietly, without ceremony. Cultivating this relationship with your dreams is like tuning an instrument. The mind, left to wander, hums in many directions, but a simple phrase or image can guide it into harmony. Some people keep journals beside their bed to write down the dreams they recall upon waking. The act of recording strengthens the bridge between night and day, training the brain to remember more clearly. Others use visualization, imagining a place or symbol before sleep, such as a door, a garden, or a light, to create a familiar entryway into the dream world. These rituals are not superstition. They are signals to the subconscious that you are paying attention, that you are listening. When approached with patience, dream incubation becomes a dialogue across the boundary of consciousness. You might fall asleep repeating a gentle intention. Show me what I need to understand. Sometimes the answer comes in images too abstract to decode, but their emotional truth lingers. The dream doesn't always speak in words. It speaks in sensations, colours, rhythms. One night, you might stand on a mountain and feel peace. Another night, you might float through water and wake with clarity about letting go. The language of dreams is symbolic, but the message is often simple. Trust what feels resolved when you wake. Philosophers have long noticed how the act of intention shapes reality, even beyond dreaming. Focus determines perception. Perception, in turn, shapes experience. It's a chain reaction as subtle as the movement of tides. To dream with intention is to practice this principle in its purest form. You choose what seed to plant, and the mind, like fertile soil, finds its own way to nurture it. The results might be unpredictable, but they're always meaningful because they arise from your own depths. There's also humility in this practice. The dreamer learns to ask, not to demand. In the same way that a scientist poses a question to the universe, a dreamer poses one to the inner cosmos of the mind. You cannot force an answer. You can only create the conditions for it to appear. The beauty lies in the waiting, in the trust that something unseen is listening. And what of the idea that dreams might bridge not only the layers of your own mind, but other realities as well? Some lucid dreamers describe using intention to travel, not through places, but through versions of themselves, to ask, What would it feel like to live differently? Whether this is imagination or something deeper doesn't matter as much as what it teaches. That awareness is fluid, capable of exploring possibility without fear. So tonight, if you wish to try, approach it not as an experiment to prove something, but as a small ritual of curiosity. Before you sleep, turn off the noise. Let your breathing slow. Think of a question, a scene, or a feeling you want to understand. Picture it softly, like a candle flame you're cupping from the wind. As you drift into darkness, let that image follow you. Do not chase it. Let it lead. If the dream responds, listen without analysis. If it doesn't, trust that it still heard you. The subconscious works in its own seasons. Even silence is a form of reply. And when you wake, take a moment before moving. The border between sleep and day is thin in those first seconds. Insights can slip away like mist. Write what you remember. Sometimes clarity hides in fragments. Dream incubation is in the end less about shaping dreams and more about shaping awareness. It reminds you that the mind is not passive. It's a living field, sensitive to focus, ready to collaborate. Each night is an invitation to converse with that deeper self, to let the dream speak in its ancient tongue. And even if you don't remember the words, their echo remains in the calm that greets you at dawn. A whisper of guidance from a wiser version of you carried across the quiet sea of sleep. There is a quiet kind of science that requires no telescope, no lab, no instruments, only patience, attention, and wonder. It's the science of looking inward. The dreamer, in this sense, becomes an astronomer of the mind, gazing into the night sky within, mapping the constellations that appear behind the eyes. Each dream is a star, each emotion a planet, each pattern a galaxy of thought that has formed over a lifetime. And just as the outer universe expands beyond measure, so does this inner one, infinite in its variety and still largely unexplored. When you begin to approach your dreams with curiosity rather than judgment, something remarkable happens. They start to reveal order. At first, the dreams seem chaotic, a jumble of unrelated scenes. But after a few nights, certain images repeat. The same corridor, the same body of water, the same unknown voice whispering a name you never quite catch. These recurrences are not random. They are the gravitational centers of the inner cosmos. Your mind orbits them because they hold emotional gravity. To study your dreams is to chart these patterns patiently. Keeping a dream journal is like building a personal observatory. Each morning, before the details fade, you write what you remember, not just the plot, but the sensations, the mood, the texture of the air. Over time, you begin to notice recurring symbols. A closed door might appear whenever you feel unready for change. A broken bridge might surface when something inside you doubts connection. These images are not puzzles to solve, but mirrors reflecting the invisible forces shaping your life. Neuroscience might explain this patterning in terms of neural networks and emotional memory. The brain revisits similar imagery because it reactivates the same circuits, the same clusters of emotion and experience. But that explanation does not diminish the poetry, it deepens it. The brain is not merely firing electricity, it is painting with it. Each night your neurons compose a symphony of associations, weaving together past and present to create meaning. In that way, the dream journal becomes more than record keeping, it becomes dialogue. Some dreamers take this further, turning reflection into experiment. They test how emotion influences their dreamscapes. By setting an intention of peace before sleep, they often find their dreams softened. By focusing on gratitude, the scenery brightens. This isn't mysticism so much as psychology, expressed through metaphor. The mind responds to attention like a plant to light. Wherever you direct it, growth follows. To study your dreams is to study how attention itself sculpts experience. There's a long lineage of thinkers who have treated dreams this way, not as passive events but as natural laboratories of consciousness. The philosopher Aristotle once wrote that dreams are the residues of the day, yet also hints of insight. Later in the 20th century, researchers discovered that creative breakthroughs often appear after sleep. The chemist Kekule dreamed of a serpent biting its own tail and woke with the structure of the benzene ring in mind. The poet Coleridge awoke from an opium-laced vision and began to write Kubla Khan. These stories remind us that imagination is not idle. It is the brain's oldest form of experimentation. To be an inner astronomer is to engage with this imagination deliberately. You observe without forcing, record without interpreting too quickly, and allow patterns to emerge in their own time. It's tempting to treat dreams like riddles with answers, but they are more like clouds, constantly shifting, revealing shapes only from certain angles. Some nights you may find clarity, others only mystery. Both are valuable. Even silence has its data. What makes this practice so quietly revolutionary is its gentleness. You do not need to believe in mystical realms or hidden powers. You only need curiosity and kindness toward your own mind. When you look at your dreams, you're really looking at yourself from a distance, the way an astronomer gazes at a star millions of light years away, knowing that the light they see left long ago. Dreams, too, are light from the past, memories and emotions still travelling through the vastness of your psyche, reaching you now in the form of story. And sometimes, in these nightly experiments, something unexpected happens. You discover empathy for your own mind. You realise that even your nightmares are trying to protect you, that every recurring symbol, however unsettling, is a messenger carrying something you once neglected. To study your dreams is to begin the slow work of reconciliation between all the parts of yourself. It is inner astronomy, yes, but also inner diplomacy. The ethical dimension of this exploration is important. Curiosity must always come before control. Dreams are not laboratories to manipulate, but landscapes to explore respectfully. Trying to dominate them, to force outcomes or edit their content, can close the door to what they truly have to show. The goal isn't to steer the dream, but to listen to it, to let the unconscious speak in its own dialect of imagery and emotion. As in any experiment, observation changes the outcome. The trick is to observe gently enough that the natural process continues unharmed, and through this patience, something even more profound appears, a recognition that the boundaries between the dream and waking life are thinner than you think. The insights gained at night often ripple quietly into the day. You may find yourself responding with more calm, more creativity, more compassion. It's as though the subconscious, once acknowledged, starts collaborating with you in waking life as well. The deeper lesson of dream observation is that awareness itself is transformative. In physics, some say observation brings potential into being. In the realm of the mind, awareness performs a similar act. It brings shadow into light, turning confusion into understanding. Each time you remember a dream, each time you reflect on its meaning, you're performing a tiny act of creation. You're giving shape to something that was formless. You're participating in the same process that the universe performs every moment, turning possibility into reality through attention. And so, the work of the inner astronomer is both simple and sacred. Look inward. Record what you see. Treat every image, every symbol, as a celestial body worth studying. Over time, the sky within grows familiar. You begin to recognize constellations of emotion, galaxies of memory. Some stars burn out, new ones are born. The cosmos of your mind is alive, evolving, infinite. If you do this long enough, you may come to feel what all true astronomers feel when they gaze into the night: humility and awe. You realize that the universe within you is made of the same light as the universe above. Both are reflections of the same mystery, two mirrors facing each other in endless depth. And in that realization you might smile, close your notebook, and fall asleep again, ready to wander through the galaxies of your own dreaming heart. Every night, as billions of people fall asleep, the same miracle unfolds in countless forms. Thoughts dissolve into images, memories blur into symbols, and individual stories drift into a collective hush. Each dream is private, yet the act of dreaming is universal, an ancient rhythm pulsing through every human life. When you look at it from far enough away, it feels as though the entire planet exhales together, the darkness filled not with silence, but with imagination. And in that shared surrender, something larger than the self begins to speak. Scientists and philosophers have both tried to describe this shared pulse in their own ways. Some call it the global rhythm of consciousness. Others, more poetically, see it as the mind of the species, millions of brains flickering like city lights across the surface of the earth, connected by the invisible currents of empathy. Modern neuroscience has even begun to map what happens when we understand each other. Deep inside the brain, there are cells that echo the actions and feelings of others, mirror neurons they're called. When you see someone smile, a tiny reflection of that smile lights up in your own brain. When you watch someone in pain, the same circuits that would make you hurt begin to stir. It's as if the body knows that to perceive another being is to participate in their experience. In this sense, empathy is the waking form of a shared dream. It allows us to feel what another feels, to imagine ourselves inside someone else's story. Every compassionate act, every moment of understanding is a small experiment in merging consciousness. And the fact that our brains are wired this way suggests that connection is not an invention, it's our original state. We are born entangled not only through family and culture, but through biology itself. Dreams may be how that entanglement renews itself. During REM sleep, the brain replays emotional memories and social interactions. It runs simulations of conflict and resolution, fear and forgiveness. You might argue with someone you miss, comfort a friend who's long gone, or experience kindness from a stranger who doesn't exist. In the language of neuroscience, these are rehearsals for empathy, a nightly practice that strengthens our ability to understand and to care. While the dreaming brain cannot distinguish between the real and the imagined, it learns from both. Each dream is a classroom for compassion. One modern theory of consciousness, often called the global workspace, imagines awareness as a luminous web. In this view, different parts of the brain send information into a shared workspace, allowing distant regions to coordinate like instruments in an orchestra. When harmony arises, we experience consciousness, the mind recognizing itself as a unified song. It's a beautiful metaphor for empathy as well. Many minds, many lives, finding a rhythm that allows them to act together. Another idea, sometimes called integrated information theory, describes consciousness as something that grows stronger wherever information connects tightly enough to form a single whole. Awareness in this view is woven from connection itself. If that's true, then empathy, the ability to join one mind to another through feeling, might be more than a social skill. It could be the universe's way of deepening its own awareness, using us as its mirrors. But let's leave the theories aside for a moment and think of this simply. When you care for someone, when you listen, when you reach out, what happens? You feel their emotions ripple through you. Their story becomes part of yours. The line between giver and receiver fades. It's the same feeling you get in dreams when two figures merge into one, when boundaries soften and identities blur. It's not chaos, it's communion. Perhaps empathy is the waking continuation of that process, the dream that never ends. If there's truth in that, then humanity's evolution has been a slow widening of the dream. Once we cared only for our kin, our tribe. Later, our empathy stretched to strangers, then to animals, and now, increasingly, to the fragile planet itself. The more we understand the interconnectedness of life, the more our shared dream expands. What was once limited to the village fire now includes the glow of satellites and screens, the digital constellations through which we see each other across oceans. Even technology, for all its distractions, is part of this long experiment in empathy. Every message sent, every image shared, is a modern version of the ancient dream circle. We may not always use it wisely, but the impulse behind it, the desire to feel less alone, is profoundly human. The tools have changed, the longing has not. And so, the shared dream continues, not only at night, but in every moment of awareness. When you stand in a crowd and feel the collective breath of strangers, when music moves you to tears, when a story from across the world touches your heart, you are participating in it. You are part of the luminous web that links consciousness to consciousness, pulse to pulse. The dream doesn't belong to any one of us. It flows through all of us, like a current of understanding beneath the surface of reality. Perhaps in the future science will find new ways to map this web, to trace the invisible threads of empathy as they spark across the planet. But even if no machine can measure it, we already know it exists. We feel it every time we sense another's joy or pain as our own. And maybe that's what consciousness itself is. The universe learning to recognize itself from every angle, every perspective, every dream. In the end, whether we talk of neurons or souls, quantum waves or mirror circuits, the message is the same. Reality is not built from separate things, but from relationships. Every atom holds the memory of others. Every life touches countless others in ways unseen. Dreaming together, feeling together, is how the cosmos remembers it is one. And so, as this journey draws to its close, perhaps the question isn't whether parallel selves share their dreams, but whether all of existence is already one vast dream dreaming itself through us. Maybe the stars, the oceans, the cells in your hand are all participating in the same slow awakening, the universe realizing over and over that it is alive, aware, and endlessly connected. When you close your eyes tonight, try to remember that. The world you enter in sleep isn't somewhere else. It's another way of seeing the same whole. You're not leaving this reality. You're turning it inside out. The people you meet in your dreams, the voices that guide or comfort you, might simply be reflections of the greater mind you belong to, speaking in a language older than words. Perhaps the universe streams through us. Each mind is a flicker on its endless sea, each thought a ripple expanding into the dark. And when you wake, carrying fragments of those dreams into the day, you continue that creation. You give shape to the cosmos's imagination. Maybe you never stopped dreaming. Maybe reality itself is the dream that learned to wake,